I would like now to give the word to Brigadier General Amir Avivi, someone that I knew some time ago and I have a lot of respect for. He's actually the CEO of Israel's Defense and Security Forum. During his service, he held senior roles in the IDF, including Deputy Controller of the Security Forces, the Director of the Office of the Chief of Staff, Deputy Commander of the Gaza Division, Commander of the Sagi Division, Commander of Battalion 605, and Commander of the School of Combat Engineering. General Avivi, good afternoon, welcome, and yours is the floor. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. It's really a pleasure. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to address the European Union. I must start by saying that we have to understand and realize that this is not just a local war between Hamas and Israel. This is a regional and global war, and the results of this war will pretty much define the future of the Western society. All of the extremist organizations, all the terror organizations are looking now, Iran is looking, all its proxies, on how this war is going to end and what kind of approach is the West going to put. And I think that there is only one hope for the Western society. It's a decisive win against Hamas. And following that, what should happen is what President Biden started doing before this war, is the build-up of an alliance, of an Israeli, American, European, Sunni alliance with Saudi Arabia and the moderate Sunni state to really counter this process of Iran taking control of the Middle East. And it's not only Iran. Iran is backed up by the Chinese economy, working closely, as we know, with Russia, equipping Russia in Ukraine. We have a front that has emerged in the Middle East that has emboldened Iran to launch an attack through its proxies, through Hamas. All the build-up of Hamas is Iran. So are the Houthis and the Iraqi militias and the militias in Syria and, of course, Hezbollah. We see this octopus taking over the Middle East. And I think that really dealing with all these challenges requires, at the end of the day, a coalition. Lieutenant Colonel Lerner explained at length what is going on in Gaza. I was in the past not only the Deputy Division Commander of the Gaza Strip, I was also the combat engineer of the division many years ago, and already in the 90s I dealt with the tunnels. We need to understand that what we are seeing inside Gaza is a whole city underground, huge tunnels, some of them even cars are being driven inside them. It's a huge infrastructure, and what happens is that the IDF is fighting on the ground, but then you have thousands of terrorists underground emerging from different places, trying to surprise the soldiers. Today, 8 soldiers were killed. One of them is a 20 years old soldier named Ben Shelley, who I have known since he was a young kid, the son of Brigadier General Moshe Shelley, who commanded the combat engineers. I was his deputy twice. This is what we are experiencing, a very, very complex war. And I think that the faster we manage to destroy Hamas, the faster there can be a build-up again and taking care seriously of the humanitarian issue in Gaza. Now, if we do ceasefires, as was suggested before, this will basically serve only one side, Hamas, to equip, to regroup. This is what happened, by the way, in the last ceasefire, which we did because we wanted the hostages back. So there was something to gain here. But giving Hamas time to regroup, equip, and then launch attacks, this is going to prolong the war and also the suffering of the Palestinians. Gaza is a very densely populated area, and it's very small. And as was said before, there are almost 2 million people. And I think that what is happening, talking about the humanitarian issue, is unprecedented, in the sense that we have many displaced people, many refugees, and it's the first time in modern history that these refugees are locked on purpose in a war zone and are not let out by Egypt. Gaza borders Egypt. There is the Rafah crossing. The human thing to do, the right thing to do, is to let the women and children out into the Sinai Peninsula where they can get humanitarian aid without Hamas stealing it, where they can be in a safe zone where there is no war. And following that, these people, once the war ends, can go back to their homes safe. The IDF, under the reality that exists at the moment, are doing really the best they can. They call people, they tell them to move from one place to another before we launch an attack. We're really, I think, doing the best we can, but this is not the big solution. I mean, in Ukraine, 14 million people left Ukraine, and this is in a reality where the Russians conquered not such a big area. Here, we have to take the whole Gaza Strip. To destroy Hamas, we need to take control of the whole Gaza Strip. And then it will take a long time to dismantle all this terror infrastructure, all these rockets, all these tunnels, thousands and thousands of terrorists. This is a long process. We have to understand that. But the best scenario for the people is two things. One, letting them go out to a safety zone. And I think the European Union and the US should pressure Egypt to open the borders, because what is happening now is inhuman and unheard of. And I would expect a bigger pressure on Egypt talking about that. The other thing is that the faster Israel takes control of the area and liberates the Palestinians from this terror organization, the faster they will be able to go home, and the faster Israel will be able itself to spread the humanitarian aid and really actually assist the society and not a terror organization to continue its fight. So I think we have a lot to do to really push the right policies to win the war and also to take care of the humanitarian issues and, of course, to bring back the hostages. Now, in the north, we have a big problem. Many Israelis are displaced. Our citizens are saying, we're not going back. We're not going back to the north if we have Nukhba on steroids in the form of Hezbollah, 100 meters from Israeli towns, planning to do exactly what the Nukhba did. So let's look at it. What are the choices? One choice is Israel finishing the war in Gaza and then fighting Hezbollah in South Lebanon to push them north. And this not only will create a very big war in Lebanon, which will be also devastating, but probably might ignite a whole regional war. And I think this is something nobody wants. So how do we make it possible to really bring resolution 1701 and impose it on Lebanon? And Europe has a lot of power over Lebanon, a lot of connections, economical connections. And we need to really be very strong on Lebanon as a state and on Hezbollah to take its forces and move north of the Litani exactly as the resolution states, because this is the only chance we have to prevent war in Lebanon. It's either war or 1701. There aren't many choices here because the Israeli citizens are not going back home, and the government of Israel cannot keep all these citizens in hotels, as fancy as they are. By the way, some hotels are great. But, I visited many hotels this last week. People want to go home. It's their homes. They don't want to stay in a hotel. So this is the situation in Lebanon. I want to say something about Judea and Samaria. I want to be crystal clear. There is no phenomena of violence of settlers. First of all, when we talk about settlers, these are 500,000 Israeli citizens, normal Israeli citizens that work, that serve. Many of them are fighting now in Gaza and in the north. There are lawyers, there are doctors, farmers, regular people. From all these regular people, you have maybe 10, 20, I don't know, maybe people who, by the way, didn't kill anybody, didn't butcher anybody, maybe did some things that they shouldn't do. But when we, in my organization in IDSF, did in-depth research, how much violence there is in this area, talking about Israelis, compared to Tel Aviv, we found that in Tel Aviv there was 2.5 times more violence than this area. There is no phenomena. And I think that when people want to push a two-state solution, it doesn't need to be by taking a whole society and trying to portray them as people who are committing crimes or whatever, because this is not the reality. Now, I want to say something about two-state solution. The Palestinian Authority is not only completely corrupt, funds terror in billions. By the way, the Palestinian Authority is paying to all the Nukhba terrorists that butchered Israelis. Yes, they are paying also Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad. Billions. They are inciting in their own education system, and they are not really controlling anymore most of the areas in Judea and Samaria, in the West Bank. There is nobody to talk to. So in Gaza, we have Hamas, and we see what is going on. The Israeli government is saying crystal clear, we are not going to allow the Palestinian Authority to take over in Gaza, because when we gave the Palestinian Authority the cities in Gaza in 1994, it took the Palestinian Authority 7 years to take this place from the Stone Age, literally, to rocket shooting on Israel. And this is the Palestinian Authority, not Hamas. And we see the incitement that is going on. I think we really, the day after, need to think about new solutions, different from the current two-state solution. And I think there are exciting and very good solutions for the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. We don't include trying to push this with terror organizations or entities that are devoted to the complete destruction of Israel and the Jewish people. Thank you very much.
I have one question, but with two aspects, and that is there some sort of timeline estimate of how long all of this might progress? I understand operationally on the ground things are adjusting, but is there a sense in time of, how long it'll take in this current phase, and then how long would it take to dismantle the infrastructure, and when some sort of diplomatic efforts might start? And the second aspect of this is the political level, which is, if there are political developments, what would these be and in what timeline? Thank you.
About the length of the war, maybe a word about the day after. In Operation Defensive Shield in 2002, which is basically the same what we are doing now, but what we did in the West Bank to take over the cities because of massive terror attacks that were emanating from the Palestinian Authority, more than 1,000 Israelis killed. It took a month and a half to regain control of the cities. It took 5 years to stabilize the situation. This is what happened in Judea and Samaria. I'm not saying this is exactly the same as Gaza. There are many different things, but stabilizing, dismantling the area, it's something that takes a long, long time. It can take more than a year. And then really the question is, what's next? I mean, from an Israeli point of view, we cannot allow never again to have a terror army on the other side. To prevent a terror army in Gaza, from a military point of view, there is only one way to do it. It's Israeli control over the Egyptian border with Gaza, meaning basically controlling the area of Rafah and preventing the endless amount of weapons, terrorists, money, everything that has been going in. And you see the huge infrastructure, everything. I want you to understand, everything in Gaza came from Egypt, from this 14 kilometers border, whether it's underground or above the ground. Endless amount of weapons and capabilities. So if you don't want a flow of terror into Gaza, Israel needs to be responsible of this border. And the other thing is that, and this is an example I give from Oslo, when we retreated in 94 from the cities in Gaza and still controlled the Egyptian border and still had towns inside Gaza, just by not operating in these cities, they went, as I said before, in 7 years from the Stone Age to rockets. Same happened in the West Bank. We retreated from the cities. Following that, they built huge military powers that was devastating for Israel. Thousands of Israelis killed. To maintain security, Israel needs full freedom of operation and overall security responsibility of this area. And what I'm saying is basically what the government is saying, what the Prime Minister is saying, also the Minister of Defense. Israel needs to be responsible for the overall security in this area. And then remains the question, who will run everyday life afterwards in Gaza? Israel has no interest to run everyday life of Palestinians, but it does have an interest not to have terror organizations running them. The government is saying clearly, not Hamas, not Palestinian Islamic Jihad, but also not Palestinian Authority, following our experience and what we're seeing in the West Bank. My guess is we'll have to rely on the local clans in the cities, something very similar to the Emirates. By the way, even in Israeli cities, in Israel, Israeli Arabs, the cities are run by clans. So maybe Emirates, that might be a viable solution, talking about really thinking out of the box. Now, I don't want to go too much into politics, but I want to say something because politicians were mentioned, and Benny Gantz and so on. I warmly suggest not to look at current polls. It's not relevant because I can tell you, as somebody who is leading a grassroots movement of 20,000 Israeli officers and commanders and warriors in reserve and retired, and are very connected to the Israeli society, that when this very long war will end, and I say very long because it's not only going to be long in Gaza, we might have to also, as you understand, fight in Lebanon. When this will end, I think that the vast majority of the society will want a new political system. There will be new parties that nobody is now talking about that will change end to end the political system of Israel. I think that we'll have to wait, and I think there are going to be huge changes in Israel in the future.
If there are no further questions from our colleagues, I would like to add to your comments. I was in the Emirates last week. What I can say are two things. You spoke about Sunni moderate countries. I can tell you that I believe that these kind of countries are the most interested in the ending of Hamas for many reasons, and Hezbollah, by the way. Second, that my impressions, in meetings with the leadership of some of these countries, is that, of course, they want to keep their commitment to the Abraham Accords, which I think is a fantastic news for the future, hoping that once this ends, these Abraham Accords will continue to bring prosperity to the region and to everybody. About the polls, I have to tell you that here in Europe also we have to avoid. I have a lot of colleagues, as I heard yesterday in the debate, that are thinking more in the polls than in the sufferance of Palestinians and Israelis. In my case, as president of the delegation of Israel, I believe a very moderate intervention, trying to bring everybody together, like what I call the spirit of the resolution on the 19th of October, but unfortunately, I heard all kind of things yesterday. So that call not to be thinking in polls and votes, I think it's a very, very opportune asking. That also here in Europe we have to take into account those who have a clear conscience that we want to help for the solution, not for the problem.